Good stewards know the only way to heaven is by putting Jesus first in our lives. Putting our lives on the line for Jesus Christ. It says, He is the gate. Now, little history lesson. He's talking about shepherds of that time, and out in the hills, they built rock pens about 4 feet high, and the shepherd would lie across the opening so that if robbers or wild animals wanted to get through the sheep, they had to go through the shepherd. And Jesus is saying, hey guys, you want to get to heaven, you got to go through me. You got to put me first in your lives. We hear about that all the time. I'm not going to embarrass us this afternoon. I'm not going to ask how many of us put Jesus first in our lives. Not how many of us come to Mass on Sunday. I can see all of you here. It's a wonderful thing coming to Mass on Sunday. But Mass doesn't get us to heaven. Mass just simply gives us spiritual fuel to go out through those exit doors and for the next week put Jesus first in our lives. I'm not going to embarrass us by asking us how many of us put Jesus first in our lives at least 70% of the time. In our culture, typically, a passing grade is 70%. 69% we fail. I'm not going to ask even how many of us put Jesus first in our lives 50% of the time. I'm not going to ask because, again, I don't want to embarrass us. I think most of us don't do too well when it comes to that score. As a man who believes in stewardship, I'm always preaching on stewardship. I begin every one of my homilies by saying, good stewards. We know that we got to do the basics. We have to pray. Now, prayer is a lot easier than most of us think. And it isn't so much that we got to pray a huge percentage of the day. As a priest, I have gotten my prayer time up to 90 minutes a day. But I don't think you have to come anywhere near that to satisfy Jesus. No, I don't think so. I'm going to recommend something else today. I want all of you to at least think about trying it as something similar. 10 times a day. 10 times a day, say something like I say at the end of our intercessions. Lord, give me what I truly need and the courage to do something beautiful with it. That might take 8 to 10 seconds. So, if you said that 10 times in a day, you would be praying all of 80 to 100 seconds. But it'd be meaningful because you'd be sprinkling connection with God throughout your day. And as I have said so many times, get conditioned to do it. Do it at times when you know you're going to be doing something. Do it when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night. Do it when you shower, right before. Do it when you take your clothes, put your clothes on, when you take your clothes off. Do it the 3 times a day or 6 or 7 times a day that you eat. Do it when you turn the television set on. Do it when you turn the television set off. You think of those things that you know and get yourself conditioned every time to say, Lord, please give me what I truly need in life and the courage to do something beautiful with it. Connection with God. Second part of the stewardship tripod is ministry. And I have said many, many, many times, and I truly mean it, I think that most of us do a pretty good, maybe a better than pretty good job in ministering to our families. But Jesus tells us it isn't enough. Remember when Jesus' mom came when he was ministering, and the people came and said, Jesus, your mom is out there. He said, my family is he who does the will of God. Now, he wasn't putting his mother down. He knew that his mother did the will of God. But he was out there for a good reason, to teach us that it isn't enough just to minister in our families. We've got to minister outside of our families as well. Stewardship renewal is going to come up pretty soon, so sign up for a couple of ministries. Sign up, go join Rotary Club or Kiwanis or the Knights of Columbus, all wonderful organizations. Put your service with others. And then that bugaboo, sacrificial giving. In the Old Testament, God the Father says 10%. Jesus comes along and says, I am fulfilling the Old Testament. And Jesus doesn't give us a number. He doesn't tell us how much. I give you the number. I think a minimum is Trinity giving, 1% to God the Father, 1% to God the Son, 1% to God the Holy Spirit, a minimum of 3% of our gross income. If we're making a family income of $40,000 a year, that's $1,200 a year, $100 a month to church and to charity. And you say, oh, I can't do that. I got too many other bills. Well, that's because we're not putting God first in our lives. If God was first on our budget, and then we decided all of our other expenses were predicated on what was left after we gave 3% to God, God would be first in our lives, and we would have that amount of money. Two quick little modern parables based on true stories about sacrificial giving. One is one of my favorite saints, St. Maximilian Kolbe. I'm sure you've heard this story before. I've told it before. Kolbe was a priest. He was put in a concentration camp during World War II by the Nazis. One of his fellow prisoners escaped, and the commandant, a really mean guy, said, okay, I'm going to starve 10 of you to death. And he started picking one by one for the 10 who would be starved to death. When he picked one man, Father Kolbe said, oh, Commandant, he is a father. He's a husband. Take me instead. And the Commandant said, your life? Sure, I'll take you. Threw all 10 in a cell, and they slowly starved to death. Father Kolbe kept up their spirits, prayed with them. All 9 others died. Father Kolbe was still going strong, and so much so that the Nazis finally poisoned him to death, frustrating the commandant. Maximilian Kolbe knew how to put Jesus first in his life. Now, we're not going to have that kind of opportunity. Second little modern parable, also based on a true story. Dr. Sandy is an American physician. She is a member of Physicians Without Borders, Doctors Without Borders. And she was assigned to Zimbabwe and Africa. And one Sunday, a group of 11 parishioners from St. Teresa of Avila Parish in Phoenix, Arizona, came as a mission group to help out the Doctors Without Borders, and they were assigned to Dr. Sandy. And their first job was just to observe, and what they observed was Dr. Sandy taking care of a man who had walked for more than a week. a bushman who had slit his leg open pretty much from his ankle to his knee and walked for more than a week to get to Dr. Sandy. When he got there, his leg was turning black. The wound was festering. There were bugs and maggots inside the womb. It was oozing pus. The stench was horrific. And one of the 11 volunteers from St. Teresa Parish said, kind of speaking a thought, not even realizing she was speaking, "I wouldn't do that for $1 million." And Dr. Sandy immediately said, "Neither would I. I do it to put Jesus first in my life." Now, we're not going to be called to do anything that dramatic. What we're called to do is pray every day. We're called to minister not only in our families but outside of our families, and we're called to sacrificially give. Let us all quit saying, "I'm going to get around to it." Let's do it. My sisters and brothers, we are all called to be good stewards, and good stewards know the only way to get to heaven is by putting Jesus first in our lives.